Hi everybody, I'm System Check 66 and welcome to my Village Resident Evil review, or Resident Evil 8 review. We've finally reached the end of the line. I've played through the game. I actually finished it over the weekend. It took me 2 sittings. And that wasn't even me sort of gunning through it. Like, you know, at first I was kind of pushing forward a little bit, still exploring and stuff like that. And then sort of the middle part of the game I was exploring, and so I didn't rush it. But it took me about 2 days, 2 sittings, literally 2 sittings to finish it. Now, you guys might have seen all the 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 scores from publications and different sites. You know, across the board, this game is scoring 9s, 10s, these, you know, high achievements. And while it is a fun game to play, we'll get into it a little bit later because I'm going to go over, obviously, what's good and what's bad about it. It is in no way the best Resident Evil game to date, and it's not better than 7, and it's not better than Resident Evil 4, in my humble opinion. Resident Evil 7 I originally gave like a 10 out of 10. My feelings on the score have changed over the years. I think it's about an 8, close to a 9, a high 8 out of 10, definitely, because then the remake of 2 came along. And also I've just played them back to back, so I've played the remake of the first one to get some more achievements, you know, some trophies, and I played Resident Evil 2 Remake to get some trophies and stuff for that, and then I played 7 afterwards. And when looking at Remake of 2 and 7, I like Remake way more than 7. Obviously the remake of the first one's the best game out of those two. But yeah, the Remake of 2 I enjoyed more as a Resident Evil experience compared to, say, 7. 7's good, I'm not knocking 7, but I have kind of gone down my scoreboard when I gave it a 10 to it's like an 8. And then I think Resident Evil 2 Remake is like an 8, bordering on a 9 out of 10. And obviously the remake of the first game is like a 10 out of 10. So, you know, I would say that the Remake of 2, a high 8, close to a 9, 7, like an 8, standard 8. Still really good games. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because I would urge you to go out, and before buying this, if you're new to Resident Evil and you haven't gotten any of the older games, or you've kind of taken a break from the series and this is, you know, the first game you're playing after a long hiatus, I would urge you to go and buy the Origins collection, definitely, like the PS4 collection of Remake and also 0, and then move on to the Remake of 2 and play 7 before you play this. 7 is a better game than this game. It was a better game than this game, and the Remake of 2 is more, it feels more like Resident Evil than this game does. We're going to get into it, obviously this is a review. Now, I did make a previous video, but it was like 2 hours long. Reasons being is I just finished the game, I made a review, and I didn't really have any sort of main structure to that review, so it ended up being 2 hours long. And also, you're going to hear in this review reasons why I kind of wanted to explain why I wasn't a fan of some of the things in this game, and the story. So without further ado, let us get into the review of Resident Evil Village from myself. Okay, so graphically, let's talk about graphics first. First thing that hits you. Graphically, the game is a good looking game. It's not amazing in any way, let's just say that. It doesn't blow my socks off, but it is a great accompaniment to 7. I don't think the graphics have edged anything over 7. They're sort of similar. One thing I did notice is some of the textures in the game are a little crappy, definitely. Like when you're sort of wading through the grass, or they're like these fields of wheat. You probably have done that in the demo. The texture of the actual grass looked crap. Like, I'm just going to be honest, it looked like a really nasty JPEG. So yeah, but then there's other things in the game. There's other environments and you know, collectibles, items, guns, all that stuff that are extremely well detailed. Definitely, the environment itself is an interesting one to explore. If we're talking about the village, it kind of acts as a hub world, a little bit like Metroid Prime, or I've heard people say Metro has a hub world similar to this one. But because I've played Metroid Prime and haven't actually played Metro, I'm going to compare it to that. So it reminds me of the Talon overworld you get in Prime, and then it branches off to these different areas. Resident Evil Village is like that, but on a smaller scale, and you get these 4 like locales that are owned by the 4 lords. So each one of the lords, Moreau, Donna Buenavito, Dimitrescu, Lady Dimitrescu, Heisenberg, they all like own these 4 areas. Basically, they're in charge of that. And once you kill them, it X's them out, so you get a big red X on your map. So it shows you that you've kind of you've completed that area and you've X'd them out essentially. This is going to be a spoilery review, but we'll get into spoilers a little bit later on when we're talking about story and stuff like that. But if any spoilers do kind of just pop up in this review, don't hate me for it. It's just because this is off the top of my head. I haven't got a script or anything, so we're just talking about it on the fly, straight off the top of my head. But I will try not to spoil it, and then, we'll spoil it later on. So, graphically, like I said, everything is cool. Everything's fine. If I had to rate the graphics, just the graphics alone, I would say they're a straight up, I guess 8 out of 10, or high 7 out of 10, definitely. I was most impressed with like the vistas and stuff that you can see when you're on top of the castle, or you just see from miles and miles, and you can see these vistas. I thought that looked incredible, and it was great attention to detail, and that's what gave it that atmosphere and that feeling. I also like the fact that we're in like a snowy environment. We haven't really been in too many icy, snowy environments other than, say, the Antarctic facility in Code Veronica, or I forget what it's called, but the facility in was it like Russia in one of the Umbrella Chronicle games? Yeah, that's the only times I can remember. But in this, we're in a snowy village, and it's very cold and icy and stuff, and I like that. It's cool as a setting. And I also think it's incredible that we've reached a point now where they can render these environments that we only saw sort of pre-rendered, say like in the Resident Evil remake and in games like that, where they can now render these environments in full 3D and they look sort of close and nearly as good, maybe just as good as the pre-rendered sort of like backgrounds and stuff from the older games and remake and Zero. I think that it's incredible that we've reached this point. So some areas, indoor areas within, say, the Castle Dimitrescu, look so regal and extravagant and grandiose, and it just reminds me of the mansion, the Spencer mansion, and that's never a bad thing, and yeah, Castle Dimitrescu is like probably my favourite area in the whole game, next to maybe Heisenberg's factory, or at least half of Heisenberg's factory, and the village itself, the hub world, but there's good things and bad things with the hub world, we'll get into it, but I like Castle Dimitrescu. It reminded me of like older sort of like environments from the Resident Evil series, which is what they were going for, and it did work. The one thing I don't like in this game, although we will get onto the dislikes later on, so I'll just say it now, is the interaction, the environmental interaction, the damage that the environment takes if you lay a mine or you throw a grenade or you're trying to slash stuff. It's literally like non-existent, really. Other than a couple of vases or glass you can smash to, get some ammo or a jewel or something, it is non-existent. There's no real wear and tear on the environments when you're sort of fucking around with explosives or, shooting stuff. And I know that that's kind of similar to RE7 and just, the series in general, but I just thought they could have stepped it up a notch, stepped up a level. We could have some environmental sort of damage and stuff like that. But other than that, like I said, Castle Dimitrescu, wicked. And that kind of leads into the next thing I want to talk about, and that's locations in general, which I touched upon, a minute ago. Locations in general are cool. They didn't offend me, didn't, have me sort of looking down my nose at them. The best locations, in my opinion, is the hub world, although there are times in the hub world where it gets a little bit stale and a bit boring, but we'll go into that, like I said, in the negative sort of section of this review. I like Castle Dimitrescu, although it was very linear. A lot of this game can be linear. And I liked Heisenberg's factory. They were my favourite locations in the game. But Heisenberg's factory, again, there's some stuff to do with that where it sort of outstays its welcome. A lot of people have said this in other reviews. Now, before we continue, I'm going to tell you the truth. When I made my first review, I fucking hated this game. I did not like this game. Since I've had time to think about it and go over it again and play a little bit of Mercenaries, I thought it was a little too harsh. And this has got nothing to do with my issues with Capcom as a company. I'm looking at this game as a singular experience. So I changed my opinion. I don't think my previous review was as professional as this one. I'm trying to make it a bit more professional. So yeah, let's continue. Anyway, with locations. So all in all, locations are cool. You don't spend much time at Buenavito's house, or her little cottage or whatever it is. And you don't spend much time at Moreau's kind of location either, in Moreau's location, which is like an underwater sunken city type thing. It's like a little, sort of shanty town within the dam area of this, this huge world. You mainly spend your time at Castle Dimitrescu, the village hub world, and Heisenberg's factory. You spend the most time in Heisenberg's factory outside of the village hub world. And for me, the village hub world, with all its paths and shortcuts and interconnecting, paths and stuff like that, as well as Heisenberg's factory, were the least linear, parts of the game, the least linear locations for me, anyway, personally. So locations-wise, I was happy. They were fine. Were they amazing in any way? Like, not really. Not really. I think we've got to that point now where, I don't think they can amaze me anymore. I've got to be honest with you. In terms of locations, they were fine. I like the locations, but that's how I feel about it. It's just tepid when it comes to, did anything really impress me and amaze me? Not really. Like, I've seen, these type of mansions and castles before in the series. I've seen swampy type areas in the series. I've seen factory type areas in the series. So, like I said, nothing really blew me away or amazed me. In contrast, Resident Evil 7's locations, the Baker residence and Marguerite's little area that you fight her in, they were way better, in my opinion. They were more creative and more unique, and different to the series. And the fact it was set in Louisiana. So yeah, even though I said swampy areas have played a part in the Resident Evil games before, this was a little bit different. It kind of it worked because Louisiana is pretty much, a swamp, or at least it has swamp type areas, so it worked within the context of that game and that story and that location setting. So yeah, this is kind of like been there, done that type of deal in terms of locations. Seen it all before. Is it done well? Yes, but been there, seen that. Now we're going to move on to gameplay because next to graphics and locations, gameplay plays a big part. Is the gameplay fun compared to the demo? The two demos that I played, the castle section and also the village section, yeah, the gameplay was loads more fun. It was way more open-ended, which obviously we expected because they were only demo portions of the game. They are unchanged in the main game, so you're not getting anything you haven't seen during those demo portions of the game. But yeah, the actual build-up, when Ethan, spoiler alert, spoiler, he gets his fingers bitten off by a lichen, all that stuff, when it builds it up and builds up these moments until you get to that demo portion of the game. It's really cool because it does ramp it up. So when you get to that portion of the game and it slows down a little bit, you're not too bothered because you've tried to sort of escape the lichens just before that, and it's been some great little moments within the game and things like that. So yeah, I generally thought that the game just started off a lot stronger than the demo kind of gave you, like the demo showed us. And same with Dimitrescu's castle, although it was still as linear as the demo showed us it was, and it didn't really stop being linear. Do you know what I mean? It did funnel you down this path, and this game does do that a lot of times. But I think a lot of newer Resident Evil games tend to feel like that anyway. The Resident Evil 2 remake, Resident Evil 3 remake, RE7. Although RE7, I don't know actually. RE7, no, that's still quite linear, but it didn't feel as linear, if you can kind of see where I'm coming. But this, this is sort of semi-open world still, and does let you explore at your own leisure at some points. I will say at some points. I'm trying not to ruin anything, So yeah, like, the gameplay is a lot of fun. Does it handle first-person shooter mechanics well? Yeah, for the most part. It plays just like 7. You can block and have a parry or counter attack, should I say, now. So Ethan will punch the enemy and then kick them away, and that can save your ass in a lot of really intense battles. The only thing you can't do is jump in this game. And the fact that they're trying to make this more of a first-person shooter than 7 was, and you can't jump in it, that's really annoying, I will say that. But if we're talking about, being able to aim your gun, steady your aim, and pop heads and shoot enemies, it's fine. It's fine. The gameplay is fine. The shooting mechanics are fine. Ethan, is a fairly easy character to control. He moves perfectly fine. Is this the most fluid first-person shooter game? No, it's not by a long shot. He still feels very clunky. It's a very clunky feeling first-person shooter experience. I will say that. Sometimes when you're trying to aim up a shot, and get a headshot, and they just dodge out of the way, you'll miss your shot. Now, in your typical first-person shooter like Wolfenstein, Doom, you name it, Half-Life, Half-Life 2, Fear, I never really miss shots or headshots. I'll take people down because it's so fluid. But with this, it's clunky and it's a bit slower than your normal first-person shooter. So it can tend to you missing shots and it being kind of annoying. And you'll see during gameplay that it didn't feel as natural as, say, something like Wolfenstein. And why am I mentioning Wolfenstein? People might be like, why are you mentioning about Doom and Wolfenstein? Because this kind of reminded me of those games in its own little way. It's trying to be more of a first-person shooter than 7 ever was. And this is what you would get if you mixed Resident Evil 4 with first-person shooter mechanics, literally. But it's not even as action-packed as Resident Evil 4, I will state that. And that's not me going into negatives and minus points. That's just me saying that it doesn't handle action as well as Resident Evil 4 because it doesn't give you as much action as Resident Evil 4, or those moments when enemies are just bombarding you and then you get a breather or something in the save room, stuff like that. It still has moments where the enemies will group up and come after you, but let me use this as context. There was one moment where I came from a steel mill location and I was about to leave to go back to the village hub world, and there was about 6 or 7 Lycans that just ran up the pathway towards me, and there was a red barrel on the right. And so I ran around behind the barrel, waited for them to all group up, which they did, shot the barrel, it killed all 7 Lycans, and that was the end of the battle. In Resident Evil 4, you can do that, but then there'd just be more enemies spawning and coming after you. Now, yes, I know people are going to say we should play it on hardcore difficulty because it's a lot harder, etc, etc. But in order to get this review out, I kind of had to play it on the standard difficulty because I wanted to finish the game, and then get the review done and get the review out. It's been a couple days anyway, well, about a day, when I wanted to get my review out, sort of like the other day, yesterday, and it's already been too long as it is. So I played it on standard difficulty, and there are moments where it does get quite tough. I didn't ever die other than, facing bosses, and really Miranda, if I can remember, she's the one that killed me, and a couple of sub-bosses killed me as well. So there are hard moments in the game. There are tough moments. The bit in the catacombs before you get to Heisenberg's factory, the amount of Lycans that come after you, and the way you've got to think, strategize and sort of move around the environment and get behind red barrels, shoot them, blow up some of them to kill some of the wave of enemies, and stuff like that was really, really cool. But that was the only moment, and in the kind of castle ruins just before that, where I felt like this is like Resident Evil 4. But that's when the game becomes more action-packed and becomes more like a first-person shooter. And this game tries to replicate a first-person shooter way more than 7. 7 didn't really try to replicate a first-person shooter, it just used first-person as its viewpoint. This tries to be a first-person shooter. Does it succeed in that in terms of gameplay? Yes and no. Like I said, we'll get onto the negatives later on, but for the most part, it does succeed and is an enjoyable first-person shooter experience. If you take it on its own merits, it's still enjoyable. So gameplay's cool. Puzzles play a fair part in the game, and they're cool. They're all right. They're not amazing. They're not the best Resident Evil puzzles to date, but I was happy they did include some puzzles in there at least. So yeah, the puzzles are cool. You do get these ones called the labyrinth puzzles, and you have to find like these stone balls, and then you can drop the stone balls into the labyrinth puzzle, solve it, because you have to kind of angle the puzzle house, because it basically they represent each location that the four bosses, the 4 lords control. So you wobble the house about, you make the ball kind of go down this route, and it goes into this glowing kind of exit, and then you get like these shards of crystal and this skull and stuff like that. So it's very Resident Evil 4 in that aspect. So there's a couple of cool puzzles, not just those ones, but there's some other ones where you have to turn statues, to face each other and all this stuff. And typical Resident Evil fare. There's a cool one actually where you where you have to like match the notes on this piano to the notes that it wants you to match. It's extremely easy, but I liked it. It was cool. It reminded me of Resident Evil, you know, the original Resident Evil with the piano room, stuff like that. So that was cool. That was in Dimitrescu's castle. And exploration, that type of gameplay and stuff that we've come to know from the Resident Evil series, is fine. There are some moments, I will admit, like I said, where the village starts to become a bit tiresome. It gets a bit stale. You end up finding a jack to jack up this tractor blocking away, or at least it creates a shortcut. And I just thought it was very just mediocre. Like, it was meh. Do you know what I mean? It was great. Just got to jack this tractor up and create a shortcut. It was predictable. It wasn't that interesting. It had me, if you can kind of get on my train of thought, it had me remembering the older games and how you'd open up a room and it would just look so interesting to explore, and you'd find something like a note that revealed the story, or, you know, just something like that. Or when you unlock doors in the original Spencer Mansion, it leads to these other places where you're like, oh wow, like a secret area, you know, secret shortcut, things like that. And this game doesn't really have that in the village. You just end up going into these people's houses and solving a puzzle and unlocking like maybe a weapon upgrade, which is fine, that's pretty cool. Or, you know, just gaining currency so you can sell these gems and stuff, or you know, these trinkets, these heirlooms items to the merchants, so you can just upgrade your guns essentially, or buy some health if you're low, or ammo if you're low. And that brings me nicely onto the merchant. So the merchant is not as cool as the merchant from Resident Evil 4, or the merchants from Resident Evil 4, because it's not the same merchant in Resident Evil 4. There's loads of them. There's multiple merchants in that game. And that's why when you shoot one of them, another one appears, because they're actually like infected with the plaga. If you actually look at their eyes, you'll see that they're sort of orangey and not human looking. So they're infected with the plagas, or a plaga. But it's like a salesman type plaga, you know, someone that distributes weapons on the battlefield essentially. And so when you meet these merchants, they sell Leon guns and stuff like that, and ammo, because that's their role. That's the role they play. It's a lot more acceptable and a little bit more believable than, say, this merchant. Now, I like the voice actor for the merchant, which I believe is DC Douglas. I like the merchant as a character, but he doesn't make any sense within the context of this game, although this game at times doesn't make sense anyway. So I guess he does make sense in this game that makes no sense. He basically appears in different places, and there's not multiple versions of him. There's just one of him, okay? Unlike the merchants from RE4, and he will just appear, and he's huge. Like, you've seen him. You know the merchant's, you know, massive. He's just fat dude, and he looks like he can only get sort of around via his horse and cart. So for him to turn up at the factory or within Dimitrescu's castle didn't make any sense. Unless he can turn into like a blob or pool of water or sludge or whatever and just slither around and end up at these places, then he doesn't make any sense whatsoever, like, as a character, and how he can appear in these areas. Now, I originally, when I played the demo, I thought, oh, there's like a curtain behind him in Dimitrescu's castle, so maybe the curtain opens and it's sort of like, it looks onto the outside world, and he can park his horse and cart up, you know, and then he can sell you stuff, you can sell him stuff, and that's how it works. Like, the merchant works in the same way the merchant worked in 4, where you can upgrade your weapons, you can sell items to him, you know, for more Li. It's Li, I believe, is the currency. That's what it's called, because this takes place in Romania, in a Romanian village. So you can get more Li for selling things to him. You can put items together, collect like a doll's head, and then later on find the body and put it together, and you get more Li. If you add them, you combine them. And so you can also hunt in this game, which is really cool. That's another really cool gameplay feature in the game, although you don't end up doing it that much, and there's only certain points where you can do that. But it's cool, and the way the animals interact with you, like if you go to shoot a goat with just a pistol, it will headbutt you, take off your life. I thought that was really cool. It's not just like the lichens and the bioweapons and stuff that are a danger. It's also like the animals and stuff. So if you're low on health and you go and you shoot a goat and it just headbutts you, it could end up killing you. So I thought that was cool. And so you can get these different types of meat and stuff, like fish, you know, goat meat, pig meat, sort of like, and the merchant can cook it up and gives you like a meal, makes a meal. Ethan eats it, and then it can increase your health or your stability when aiming a weapon, stuff like that, your endurance, So that's cool. So if you block, it can be, a lot tougher than it was before. But it takes another playthrough, I think, for you to really upgrade everything, or at least I found that when I was playing through the game. So I'm trying to think now, other gameplay features. I guess upgrading the weapons and stuff. The weapons themselves are very, very cool. We're going to talk about weapons, mix it in with the gameplay. So the weapons all handle perfectly fine. I think each gun in this game, one of the game's strongest points is definitely the weapon selection. I really liked all the guns that you got. Some of them are your typical Resident Evil fare, or at least most of them are actually. You get a sniper rifle, you get a grenade launcher, you get a shotgun or different types of shotgun, you get a different type of handgun. So yeah, this is all very Resident Evil stuff, but I did like the weapons. I thought they were very cool. And like the grenade launcher has this like embroidered design on the side of it and stuff, which is very cool and sort of links to that, that old school Victorian look of everything, or at least Dimitrescu's castle has that Victorian look. So yeah, the guns and the weapons are fine. When Ethan reloads, it's a little bit more realistic, so he ain't just slapping clips in like fast as anything. He's kind of taking some time loading the clip in, which you expect. This is a Resident Evil game, so it's going to be a lot more slower than, like I said, your typical Doom or Wolfenstein Call of Duty style game, first person shooter. But still very cool. Everything feels weighty, except for the handgun. The handguns don't feel that weighty, but they're still cool. They're cool guns, but everything else, it feels fine. Like, you get scopes for your sniper rifles, so you can zoom in more. And you get a stock for your grenade launcher, which gives you more stability, things like that. So guns, weapons, perfectly fine. Knife still shit. I guess it's better than the pocket knife that the cop gives you in 7, but it's still a shit knife, definitely. Much like 7, you can create shortcuts to your guns on the D-pad, so you can select them, create shortcut, and stick them to your D-pad. I always ended up having the knife there though, so I didn't have to waste ammo when slashing boxes and things like that, to get more ammo or to get jewels and all the rest of it. Another thing that makes its way from Resident Evil 4 in a big way is the glint of sort of like gems and things like that, gemstones, and you can end up just shooting them off the wall, or at one point you go to this sort of like this cavern that's got all these crystals and stuff around, and there's loads of these gemstones, and you just end up just shooting them off the wall and they drop and you can pick them up. So that makes its way from Resident Evil 4 and 5. And a big part of this game is currency and being able to sell it to the merchant to get more Lee and then buy bigger and better weapons or upgrade your guns, stuff like that. And you can buy documents that unlock more options for crafting. So this leads me neatly into the crafting aspect of the game. Crafting in this game is fine. It's really easy. You can craft health, you can craft ammo types, and like I said, you can buy documents to then unlock options where you can create like grenade rounds or sniper rifle rounds, things like that. So the crafting's fine. It's really easy to handle. You just go into your item screen, you select where it's got like the health or handgun bullets or the other type of bullets you want to make. You collect scrap metal and these other things, I can't remember, but there's like scrap metal and other stuff, and you literally just press the X button on whatever you want to craft, and it does it. It just crafts it, boom, then you've got some shotgun shells. And that is very much needed in this game, where unlike Resident Evil 4 or 5, enemies don't really tend to drop ammo from what I could see. It's mostly them dropping Lee. Or, I don't know, some scrap metal or something like that. They don't tend to drop too much ammo, so you end up crafting most of your ammo, or finding it, or buying it from the merchant. And I don't know, that's the thing. Everything's kind of handled quite well, where you never really run out of ammo, but there were a few times when I did run out of ammo and I was a bit pissed off. Like one of the most frustrating moments in the game for me was when I went back to Buenavito's gravesite, and there's an item I want to get from her gravestone, and you have to go back to the village, grab this piece of the grave, put it on the grave, and it opens. When you get there, there's this enemy, this big giant tyrant zombie thing with a hammer. I think he had a hammer or an axe, and it just drops into the arena. It hasn't been built up. We're going to go over that a little bit later, the issues I have with this game. Hasn't been built up or alluded to or anything like that, unlike the older Resident Evil games. And he just drops into the arena, and it's very Bloodborne or Dark Souls like, very. And there's more of these zombie things that are popping up, and you have to fight him, and he does this like twirly whirly spin You know, he can just run at you. It's a small little arena. Ethan's not fast enough if he decides to jump at you or, you know, just swing at you with this axe and do the twirly-whirly spin, his special move. And so it really pissed me off because I ended up wasting so many fucking bullets on this dude. And on the zombies as well. And I did think, like, that's uneven in terms of the gameplay's a little uneven in that way, because they could have just, on standard, just had him and then maybe hardcore difficulty just throwing the zombies in there. But again, it's like Resident Evil 3 Remake. They couldn't just have you face off against the Nemesis. Instead, during one of the Nemesis battles, all these zombies start getting let out of cages and coming after you. And it was just like, why? Like, why not just have it like the original where you fight the Nemesis on his own, one-to-one, you know? He's that much of a problem that it just takes him to face Jill instead of throwing all these zombies into the mix. And this was the same situation, the same deal, and very Bloodborne-esque and like I said, and Dark Souls-esque, where they just got to throw more enemies in there while you're facing off against this sub-boss. And it's irritating. And then I end up with like 0 bullets and no bullets and nothing to craft ammo from. And that's just that's me on a personal. That's what I found personally. Like, by the end of it, I had about 5 bullets in my handgun left, and I was pretty stocked up until that point. So it's things like that that did annoy me. But I think that was more my fault as opposed to the game, because I wasn't playing it like an old Resident Evil game. Although I will say, it doesn't feel like an old Resident Evil game, so it didn't really have me thinking to myself, maybe I should keep some ammo, you know, back, basically. Hold on to some ammo just in case I face off against like a tougher enemy, a sub-boss, things like that. Because it had me in that Resident Evil 4 mentality where I just thought I'll just be getting ammo left, right and centre and just picking it off the floor, and, you know, enemies will be dropping it. And that wasn't the case, so I ended up with a stocked amount of ammo, but then nothing to craft. So the crafting's great when it works, but if you don't have any scrap metal or anything to craft, then, you know, to make bullets and health, then you will find yourself up shit creek, unfortunately. So I would advise that you keep on to scrap and hold on to that stuff, and then when you face off against these sub-bosses, mainly the sub-bosses like this dude, then you can craft ammo and stuff, and it will keep you topped up, you know, during the fight. So the crafting's fine. Crafting's fine, it works. And it's more of a personal issue and personal problem because I was coming at this game with the Resident Evil 4 mentality, and unfortunately, during that moment, it left me down a dead end, essentially. So it left me stuck a little bit. But I still took him out, rinsed out my handgun bullets. I was left with like 5, had to run past these other zombie enemies, and, you know, it was doable, but I'm just saying, like, that's the way you've got to look at this game. It is like a mixture of RE4 and then older Resident Evil games where you should conserve ammo on top of everything, which I didn't go into it with that mindset, unfortunately. So I think we can move on to the enemy designs, action set pieces, boss battles, all that sort of good stuff. So the action set pieces, the only ones that really stood out to me are some of the boss battles or sub-boss battles. There's one in a steel mill that was quite cool. There was one in the catacombs and the castle, or a castle ruins, and obviously the boss battle with Dimitrescu on top of the castle was alright. That was pretty cool. And also the slower moments, you know, where you get to explore, like the village hub world or these other areas, are much needed, definitely. But the game, unfortunately, is very uneven and strangely paced. You'll have moments of just getting through waves of enemies, and then it will be an extremely slow experience. It will slow right down to a crawl, to a snail's pace. But moment to moment gameplay in terms of ramping up the tension and the action and all that sort of stuff, and the, you know, fighting off the waves of enemies, and the feeling that you get, you know, that exhilarated feeling you get once you've cleared an area of enemies and stuff, it's a good feeling, like, and it does handle those moments quite well. Boss battles are underwhelming, I've got to say, even though I do like the boss battle with Dimitrescu and some of the other bosses, they are underwhelming. There's nothing that's as original or as unique as the Jack Baker chainsaw boss fight, or, you know, fighting Jack in a barn. The Marguerite boss battle as well, where she turns into a spider and she crawls all through the outhouse, you know, her location. There's nothing as unique as that. You know, there's no creepy spider lady with you know, with a womb full of bugs coming out of it. As much as that was fucking gross, like, it was unique. The whole thing was unique. She actually crawl through parts of the the outhouse and things like that, and it was cool. It kept you on your toes. It's quite creepy. It's quite scary. They've definitely toned down the scariness of this game because of feedback from fans of 7 and people who played 7, and I think that's a bit ridiculous. I really do. 7 was scary at points. It wasn't the scariest game I've played. I think Alien Isolation, in terms of tension and scares and things like that, and jump scares, was just way more of a scary experience than Resident Evil 7. But yeah, they toned it down. They nerfed the horror in this, definitely. But they were always going to do that because they wanted to create something that was more in line with Resident Evil 4 and actionified Resident Evil games, if we can use that as a term. So the pacing of the game, when it goes from action set pieces to suddenly quieter moments, it's very jarring. It's a bit uneven because in Resident Evil 4 you don't really get those quiet moments. There's very, very few. Instead, it just ramps it up. Each kind of area you explore and you get to, it ramps up the action more and more. And the thing with Resident Evil 4 is it did so many action set pieces, and it did them so well and so cleverly that one set piece was never really the same as the next one. Do you see what I mean? And it's the same with like Doom Eternal or any game like that, Doom 2016 or Wolfenstein, where it handles everything very cleverly. Half-Life 2, same thing. It handles all the action set pieces extremely cleverly. This doesn't. It just throws enemies at you, waves of enemies. You take them out, and that's it. And the only time I can really remember that the Lycans act like genuine werewolves is in the catacombs, where there's sort of stone pillars and stuff, and they're leaping from the stone pillars to get to Ethan, to get to you. And that's the only time I can really remember that they acted like werewolves. Other than that, they kind of seem like reskinned villagers, definitely, because they just dodge left and right like the villagers do, and you miss shots and then they come at you. Yeah, they can leap from buildings and fire bow and arrows at you and all this other shit, but if I remember right, the villagers kind of did that anyway in RE4, so they don't really sort of get on all fours and start coming at you, other than there's this one werewolf boss, sub-boss, that kind of does that. The one that I didn't really like, from the trailers, the design I didn't like, and I still don't like it. But that actual sub-boss fight was quite fun. That was actually pretty cool, because you end up going on rooftops and sniping him, and and he leaps up onto the roofs and stuff and comes after you. So it was pretty cool, the actual boss fight. But enemy designs, in terms of that boss, yeah, it wasn't that great. But going back to the sort of moment-to-moment gameplay that I was talking about, when it ramps up the action, it's cool, but the only real segment of the game that I can remember where it ramped it up and it was like Resident Evil 4 levels of just action set piece on top of action set piece was when you go to the ruins of the castle, or before that, you sort of travel through the forested area, you reach the ruins of this castle, and then you get to the catacombs, and that was cool. That's when it really unloaded everything onto you. Other than that, you'll just get waves of like Lycan enemies coming after you in the village, and you take them out and then move on and explore, and etc, etc. Finding keys and things like that, very old school Resident Evil. Obviously there's doors that you have to come back to, places that you can revisit because you have keys that unlock those doors, or an item that unlocks a path further, and that was pretty cool. There's one part actually in the game that I thought was quite unique and quite cool, and that's where you travel by boat sort of downstream. You can go upstream or downstream. You go downstream and you reach, is it, or you go upstream? I can't remember. You travel on the boat, you get off the boat, and you can go to this kind of mausoleum type area, and you have to solve this puzzle where you light the zombie on fire and he can light the way and you can progress. And I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was a unique sort of like addition to the slower paced gameplay in this game. And then if you go downstream on the boat, you actually find where this massive plot point, I should say, you also find where it's kind of residing. That's all I can say. You find some equipment from Chris's team, the Wolfhound pack. One thing I will point out is the marketing for this game straight up lied over and over again, definitely. The front of the cover would have you believe you play as Chris Redfield for a big portion of the game, and that he turns into a werewolf maybe, but instead what it is the wolf signifies the fact that there's werewolves in this game and Chris is involved, and then it's also signifying that he's part of the Wolfhound pack, or he's the alpha of the Wolfhound pack. Everything kind of relates to dogs and the alpha of the pack and things like that, and he's called Alpha. So anyway, there's all this equipment and stuff, and there's a pretty big plot point, and this particular thing is housed in... I can't spoil it just yet. When we get to spoilers, I will. But this particular thing that is central to the game's plot, this bioweapon, or this thing, this whatever it is, it's hard to talk about it without ruining it. Yeah, it's basically housed in this little cave area where Christian's team have set up sort of camp there. They set up camp sort of in many areas in this little church and stuff. In the village, so they kind of move about, so they're obviously infiltrating the village and researching and things like that, and they set up shop there, they set up camp there, and that's all I'm going to say. And that was pretty cool in terms of story development, in terms of moving the plot forward and finding this thing. And it's something you could probably miss because it's off the beaten path, essentially. You could end up going upstream to this mausoleum type area and completely miss this other fairly big plot point. Definitely. So that was cool. Stuff like that I like, where you can miss things and, that's central to the plot and progress the plot a little bit. I quite like that. But yeah, moment-to-moment gameplay, like I said, when you are exploring and things like that, and then a little bit of sort of action takes place and you get involved in some firefights. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And some of the lead-ups and setups for the newer enemies that you meet, like the flying ones and stuff like that, I quite like, where you're sort of sniping them off the battlements of the castle and moving through to pick up this item that you need to proceed. So that was all cool. The gameplay is serviceable. I will say that it's serviceable. It is fun when it handles everything well, and when it reaches those heights of like Resident Evil 4 moments and games like, I guess, Doom Eternal, things like that. It can be fun, and it is a fun game to play in segments and in parts. But like I said, it does slow down to a snail's pace, to a crawl at times, and unfortunately the fact that you've had your adrenaline pumping from these action set pieces, unlike number 4, unlike Resident Evil 4, when it slows down, it just slows to a crawl, and you end up sort of being a bit like bored. I've got to be honest, some parts of the game are a bit boring, but like I said, this is the positives and the pluses. So like I've just said, when it does do those things right, it does them perfectly fine. Boss battles, however, are disappointing. They're serviceable, much like the moment-to-moment gameplay. It does consist... I mean, Dimitrescu and Moreau consist of literally a Salazar-type boss battle, where, where Salazar was mutated, and then he would open that ribcage-type thing, and he was on top of the giant fucking worm head. That it looked like it was from a Cronenberg film or something like that, and the ribcage opens and you shoot him and he's all white with the red eye and stuff like that. That's what these bosses resemble and look like. They look like the dude as well from Resident Evil 5, who was similar to like Salazar, the the bioweapons dealer. Can't remember his name at the moment off the top of my head. I'll probably remember it later. But yeah, so it's very similar to that, where Moreau pops out of this huge like fish frog thing that he's mutated into, and you shoot Moreau's like proper form or whatnot, and he just looks like Salazar. He's pale white, and that's it. And you shoot him. And same with Dimitrescu. She's sort of like on top of this dragon mold bioweapon thing that she's mutated into, and you shoot her. Same thing. She's pale white, with just shit sticking out of her, and you shoot her. That's the main area that you've got to shoot. So I guess they're not using giant eyeballs or glowing orange things in this particular part. We'll get to that a little bit later. So yeah, the boss battles, they left a lot to be desired. Not as good as, like I said, or I've said before, not as good as the chainsaw boss battle with Jack, Marguerite, leave a lot to be desired. The sub-bosses I found to be more fun to take on, because they were just harder, and you kind of had to it's still the same thing where you're just shooting them, repeatedly, but you kind of have to work out where they're going to go, and they leap about the place and stuff, and I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, boss battles look quite grand and spectacular, but when it boils down to it, taking them on and stuff, they're not the most creative within the series, I've got to be honest. A lot of people might say, well, that's all you've ever really done in Resident Evil is shoot bosses and stuff. Yeah, yes and no. I mean, yeah, like if you fight the Tyrant in the Resident Evil remake, you just shoot him full of like Magnum rounds. But do you know what? I will say this. The Tyrant was so skillfully done. Like that boss battle was so skillfully handled, because, First off, you have to take him down, and really you need a Magnum in order to make the fight a lot easier and just breeze through it. So if you play the game first time and you don't pick up enough Magnum rounds, or you waste your Magnum rounds, you're going to have a pretty tough boss battle on your hands, shooting him with a shotgun or a handgun. And then he doesn't die, he just appears later on, bursts through the floor, fights you on the helipad, and if you're not careful, he'll run at you and slash you with his claws. And so you can't actually kill him with conventional weapons at that point. You have to wait for the rocket launcher to be dropped, pick it up, and blow him into bits, blow him apart. And so there's this whole structure to that boss battle that made it interesting. And yes, while you do just shoot him, and you kind of do that with, say, the Salazar boss battle in Resident Evil 4, there are things that make it interesting, like the verticality in Resident Evil 4 when you're fighting Salazar. You either jump down or you get up the ladder, when he's about to swipe at you with the tentacles and stuff, and he sends the Plaga-like parasites after you. So there are little things here and there, but these boss battles were uninspired because this is a game that's come out in 2021, and I expect a little bit more from the series, and not just this thing chasing you around, shooting it, rinse and repeat until it dies, until there's another cutscene and it dies. And I will say one thing, this game is full of cutscenes. It's very, very linear, and there's a cutscene every time you hit a certain point in the, in the story or the game. And there's a lot of them. I don't mind cutscenes, but there's a lot of them. They felt like way more in abundance than they were in, say, Resident Evil 7 or any other recent Resident Evil game, except Remake of 3 that had a lot of cutscenes. I'm trying to think now. Resident Evil 2 Remake didn't feel like it had loads and loads of cutscenes, but the Remake of 3 did. So this kind of feels similar to that, where there's a lot of cutscenes that kind of interrupt gameplay. So the boss battles are quite forgettable, that's one thing I can say. They visually look impressive, but they are quite forgettable, quite easy to get through on standard difficulty. Obviously, I'm still yet to play hardcore. And then the next one, which is Book of Shadows, I believe. The enemy designs... well, like I said, it's more a negatives thing. I like the Lycan enemies. I think they look good. They act like the villagers, definitely. But when the tension ramps up, the action ramps up, they are formidable foes. And I do like the way they look. It really introduces them in a cool way. And I guess they would be likened to... forgive the pun. They would be likened to lickers or hunters, something like that, in the way that they're built up. And I think the introduction of them is very well handled. Like I said, Ethan gets his fingers bitten off by one. It straight up kills this dude in this house, the guy that you've seen in the trailers that fires at Ethan. He actually goes wide and hits the door frame, and he gives Ethan his first handgun, and then it kicks off. And I think that was some of the best moments introducing the Lycans, definitely some of the most memorable moments. There's another bit that resembles Resident Evil 4, where the villagers attack you or attack Leon, and then you get the chainsaw Plaga, the chainsaw Los Illuminados cult member, and then the bell starts ringing and they disappear. So they do this same thing in Resident Evil 8, where they're attacking you, you're fending them off. It's taking place in the village section, and then the big boy comes along with the hammer and snarls in Ethan's face, and then the bell rings and they look at the bell and they head off. They leave Ethan alone, and then Ethan pulls like an arrow out of his leg, and I thought that was very cool. And it mirrored Resident Evil 4, definitely the beginning of Resident Evil 4. So all the Lycans are introduced really well and in a good way. And then the enemy designs tank. They take a step back. They're some of the worst Resident Evil enemy designs I've seen. They do not impress me in the way that the older games' enemy designs have impressed me in the past. Resident Evil 4's enemy designs, when you just think, they're just villagers, and then their heads pop and tentacles split out their heads and stuff, and plagas pop out of them like the facehugger type spider ones. Yeah, there's nothing as unique as like the chainsaw Ganado, something like that. There's just nothing as unique as the enemies, even in 4, even in 5. I'm going to go ahead and say some of the enemy designs in 6 impressed me more than this. These are just extremely lackluster and boring. Other than the vampire ladies, the Lycans, the boss designs, I'm trying to think now. There's a certain plot point to do with crows. The crows don't actually attack you, but they do play They do play a part in the game. It's quite interesting and it's handled very well. It's like it's not just shoved in your face. It's there in the background, and if you pay attention and you get to the ending of the game, it's impressive. Like, because they don't outright tell you, oh, the crows are linked to this. I can't ruin it just yet. We will when we get to the spoiler section. But crows are in this game, definitely, as an enemy. I will say that, but not in the same way that they were in the previous games. There are no spiders. There are no giant moths. There are no returning enemies from the older games. There's no returning enemies. Even the zombies in this are very lackluster and a bit boring. They're kind of reminiscent of the Revelations 2 type zombies, where they just look skeletal and, they look crap. Like, they looked rubbish in Revelations 2. The main sort of like soldier enemies in Revelations 2 weren't that great, but when they turned into zombies, no, they were rubbish. Some of the worst zombie designs I've seen. And these are like a mixture of zombies from the older games and the monks from Resident Evil 4. I would say they're more in line with the monks from Resident Evil 4, but just nowhere near as interesting. They don't have tattoos on them. They don't go like, the creepy shit that was in 4, and then their heads don't split open and giant worm fucking plagas poke out of them. So, they're not even as cool looking just in how they're dressed and stuff. The monks in RE4 were so much better than these things, and they just carry like swords and axes and stuff, and you can shoot them out of their hands, which I thought was quite cool and unique. You can obviously put them on their knees if you shoot their kneecaps, things like that. But yeah, one choice I didn't understand that they made is you're able to decapitate Lycans left, right and centre with a shotgun blast, or a well-placed handgun round. With these zombie monks and stuff, no decapitations. Any of them. Even the ones later on that crawl out of the ground that look more skeletal and more like beef jerkied. That's a term I like to use because I remember calling the zombies from Resident Evil 3, the original, beef jerky versions of the ones from 2 and 1. So yeah, like they're more beef jerky. They come out of the grave, or not even grave, but they come out of the ground in a nod to like Resident Evil, Nemesis, and also Resident Evil Code Veronica when they come out of the graves. And again, you put a well-placed shotgun round to their face, you're not getting any decapitations, no exploding heads. But with Lycans, that does happen. So I don't know what's going on there. I almost feel, because this is a Japanese developed game, apparently they have issues with like decapitations and things like that. I feel because these zombies look more human and humanoid, whereas the Lycans don't, they look like wolves and whatnot. They had an issue, like, where they had to cut out any decapitations or exploding heads when it came to the more human looking enemies. That's my take on things anyway, because there's no real reason for it that I can see, that I can understand. So yeah, they're boring. There's an enemy type, really annoying enemy type, flying one, as usual. Normally flying enemies are fucking pain in the arse. And you've seen them in the trailer. They're the ones you fight during the Dimitrescu Castle segment of the game. They kind of fly around, land on the battlements, and you can snipe them. That actual segment is impressive. It's quite cool. I like it. It's something different, to the series, and it definitely, that was one of the more unique moments. But the actual enemies you fight, these flying things with tentacles that come out of their whatever, their mouths, but they have these mini like robes on and stuff. They're rubbish. They don't look that great. They suck. They're not interesting to sort of look at. They're annoying to fight. This is the thing I'm trying to say. They've got bat wings, they're trying to fly around, but you never get to see what's underneath the robes, and it's kind of trying to do the chainsaw Ganado, and the fact you never get to see his face, what it looks like underneath that potato sack. It's trying to do that, but it doesn't have the same gravitas, and they're not that great. Those enemies aren't that great. When it comes to boss designs, as much as I like the bosses, they are literally just your typical post Resident Evil 4 era designs, enemy designs. They're like the Ouroboros type enemy designs. They're just blobs, big blobs with eyeballs and glowing shit that you shoot. And when it comes to that, they're very lazily created. That's what I'm trying to say. They're not as clever as something like a Licker. They're not as clever as something like a Ganado, a Plaga Ganado that's head split open and something's popping out of it. They're not as clever as even some of the Resident Evil 5 designs, or even 6 designs. They're just these big, massive, mutated blobs that come after you. That's all I could think of when looking at them. And that's unfortunate, because it shows you that Capcom have become lazy with the enemy designs and a lot of the other things that used to make the original games and Resident Evil 4, you know, unique and impressive, and those AAA Resident Evil experiences. You see, unfortunately, when talking about the good things, I can't even like not talk about some of the bad things. That's the problem. That's the issue with this game. I have to kind of cover bad things as well when I'm talking about some of the good things. So, I mean, I haven't got anything really good to say about the enemy designs, except for Moreau was cool. I liked Moreau as a character. Character-wise, the characters are okay. Heisenberg's annoying. Miranda's annoying. They're all mustache-twiddling type villains. They're on the same level as Wesker from Resident Evil 5. Not Wesker from before, but Resident Evil 5 Wesker. Although, you know, he was so camp and silly that I did like that version of Wesker. But they're on that same level as that character, you know, and just over the top, over dramatic, you know, villains. That's what they are. Heisenberg's irritating. I don't like the way he talks. I've got an issue with the way he talks. I don't like it. The little doll thing's irritating. Donna Buenavito obviously speaks through the dolls. So the dolls jarring and annoying. Who else? Lady Dimitrescu. She is cool, but she's not as great as you might have thought she would turn out to be, and you do only get to engage with her for the first hour of the game, and then you kill her. Spoilers, there you go. It's something that I don't think people will mind me spoiling, because that was sold as the main the main hook for the game, is that you get chased around by the big tall lady with the massive titties. Well, unfortunately, she's only present for an hour of game time, and then you beat her ass, you kill her. I would have much preferred Dimitrescu to be the main villain, the main antagonist, rather than Miranda. Miranda is just... she's a female Wesker from Resident Evil 5. There we go. That's what she is, but she's not even as cool as Wesker from Resident Evil 5. So she's very much like, the ceremony will go ahead, whether I kill you or let you leave, Ethan Winters. She's like that. Yeah, but at times, at certain points... in fact, right up at that point, she's kind of got this weird Wesker... they were even trying to do the whole Wesker, like, you know, American, but sort of British accent, and she has that right up until the last sort of moments, and then when you face off against her during the boss battle, it's not a spoiler, the last boss battle, she sounds American. The voice actors, I don't know, like when I first heard the father and stuff, you know, in the demo, the father of that woman that we were supposed to play as, I'm pretty sure Capcom said that she would play a role in the game and we'd play this new female protagonist. She dies within... well, you've seen it. If you played the demo, she dies. She definitely stays dead. The father, the voice actor who did the father in the villages and stuff, I thought on point, really, really good. But the main villains and the main cast, other than Moreau, no, they were too over the top. Like Lady D, she was alright, like, but the others were over the top and irritating. Moreau as a character, I liked Moreau. I thought he was cool. I felt sorry for him, a little bit like Salazar from Resident Evil 4, you know, so he just wanted to impress Miranda, impress his mum and stuff like that, and I did feel sorry for him, but he's still a bio-organic freak, so I didn't have any issues putting 2 bullets in his head. So yeah, like the villains of the piece, much like Resident Evil 7, they play a big role, you know, because 7 relied heavily on the Bakers. The Bakers were way more unique and interesting. They were something different to the series, you know, this family that had been taken over by the mold, by this virus, and turned into, like, cannibal freaks. But these guys are just your traditional, cheesy, like, hammy, voice-acted villains that you could find in any B-movie style game. They're just... no, like Heisenberg, people are like, oh, I love Heisenberg. I don't. I find him so fucking irritating. I've got to say that. He's so annoying. He's so irritating. His voice jars me, like, it's so irritating. Like, the doll is... oh my god. Some of the characters in this are so annoying. It grated on me. It got to the point where it grated, but... at points, I guess the voice actors do a good job. But yeah, the Moreau and Dimitrescu are my favourite villains. Talking about plus points, those two are really good. I like those 2 villains. I did. So I mean, they play a major role in you know, in enemy designs and being some of the main enemies in the game. I'm trying to think what other enemies were there. So there was the big dude who looked like I was going to say a tyrant or a massive zombie. I suppose he's supposed to be like this big sort of zombie type enemy, but he's more in line with something out of Bloodborne or Dark Souls. He reminds me of like some enemies from Bloodborne actually, and so he drops into this arena. Like I said previously, that's your first sighting of him, and he's alright. He's a cool sub boss, but just visually, I've seen it done better in Bloodborne or Dark Souls personally with those type of enemies. That's what it's trying to come across as, and sort of where they've borrowed that sort of enemy from. And then there's loads of zombies, the beef jerky ones, come out the ground and attack you. And yeah, so he was alright, I guess. The main Lycan sort of boss, sub boss, the one with the hammer, I think it's a hammer or an axe. He was cool. When he gets in your face, you get a good look at his face and stuff, and he snarls in like Ethan's face. And yeah, he was alright. He was cool. He was alright. He's a werewolf. Like, at the end of the day, werewolves are new to Resident Evil series, so we don't see many werewolves in games. So to see these done right, and they look visually like cool, visually appealing. Appealing being the wrong word, I guess. They look grotesque and gruesome, but in a werewolf way. Yeah, they're done well, and he's done well. But they are just werewolves at the end of the day, and he's just a giant version of the werewolves. I'm trying to think. So, okay, later on in Heisenberg's factory, when you reach Heisenberg's factory, you get these. I call them mini tyrant type enemies, and a lot of people are saying that they're almost like mini tyrants. They are mechanical zombies. Let's say that they're basically like a tyrant, but instead of having claws and stuff, they have like these drills. And they have these, instead of having a pumping heart, they have like these orange orbs on their chest, and that's how you shoot them. And it's very light gun shootery in the way that you take them out. They'll block with their arm the orb, and when they go to hit you, or they move their arm away to attack you, or do whatever they're doing, that gives you the opportunity to shoot them and take them down. And they take quite a few hits. They're quite tough enemies, and where you fight them is in this sort of like, usually where you fight them is in this part of the factory that's like just corridors, so it's small space and you have to sort of dodge them and things. And they're cool. I like them. I like that design. I thought they were cool. It gets a bit ridiculous later on when they are kitted out with this type of armor and jetpacks. That's when it becomes a bit too much and a bit stupid. And they remind me, they're called Panzers. They literally wouldn't look amiss in Wolfenstein, in the Wolfenstein game. That's literally, it reminded me of Wolfenstein. That's why I'm pulling so many parallels with Wolfenstein or Doom Eternal. People might be like, what do you mean? Like, why are you talking about Wolfenstein, talking about a Resident Evil game? Because these look like they belong in Wolfenstein. And they have jetpacks and armor and stuff. But, okay, the argument can be said. We had big fucking dudes, big Ganados with miniguns in Resident Evil 4 and all kinds of stuff. So, cool, whatever. In terms of enemy designs, they're alright. They go a little bit overboard, a little bit too far. I think that some of the enemy designs in Resident Evil 4 went a bit too far and overboard, but it is what it is. So yeah, I do like the mini tyrants. I call them. They're called ADATs or something. That's their name, something like that. ADATs or something. And then you've got like the normal boring zombies that I don't like. Their designs, still sort of dressed in robes, but they've got like metal helmets and things like that, They look like they're wearing like visors and things, and they're also controlled as well. Like Heisenberg can control them, much like the Plagas, to to go and dig through like rock and stuff. I don't know what the hell they're mining. In Resident Evil 4 explained what they were mining. They were mining Plaga, samples, and the spores got into them and things like that. I think it was like Plaga fossils or something, that had basically been fossilized, but were still, the spores and stuff were still dormant. So that explained why there was a mining area and what the villagers were doing mining, or the Ganados, what they were mining for. And it gave you a brief history as well as to how the Plagas came to be. With this, they're just mining because, I don't know, because they've got to depower the zombie in this game. Like, they've got to make them just depowered and not scary or as intimidating as zombies have been in previous games, or even the RE2 remake. They were intimidating in that game, but in this, they're used as the workforce essentially. So there we go. But other than a few metal garments added to their character designs, the zombies still suck, definitely. So I wasn't a fan of those, but the mini tyrants were cool. I'm trying to think of other enemies. Is there any more? There is like a sub-boss that Chris gets to face off against. It's kind of like an armoured version of the giant werewolf-like and sub-boss enemy. He was alright. He had stuff like just wriggling out of his back, like worms type, things wriggling out of his back when you fight him, but you only face one of them as Chris, and he carries this giant like mace around. So he was alright. It's hard to see though because it's so dark, so dark in this game. The game's lighting is very, very dark. So it was hard to see him, but yeah, that boss battle was okay. Is there any more? I'm trying to think. Have I missed any? Yes. Do you know what? I want to elaborate more on Heisenberg's boss form, and also the sub-boss you face before him. So this is the worst Resident Evil boss design I've ever seen in my life. Hands down. Hands down. You name one that's worse than this, that's more over the top and stupid than this one. You fight literally a car engine on legs in this game. I'm not joking. You'll be seeing the footage as well from the footage I captured of me facing off against it. It's literally a car engine on 2 legs with a propeller that tries to cut you up. And how you shoot this thing is you let it run into a wall. You avoid it, you shoot the glowing orange orb, because the glowing orange orbs are prominent in this game. You've got to like slash a few to open doors. At one point, you shoot them on the mini tyrant's chests, the ADAT's chests, or whatever they're called. And in this, it's at the back of this this car engine boss, and you shoot it to kill it. And then at one point, it gets pissed off and it starts spewing out flames. How? I don't know. I have no clue. It's the most ridiculous and over the top and stupidest Resident Evil enemy design I've ever seen. This is the worst enemy design I've ever seen in a Resident Evil game. And then you face off against Heisenberg in this polymer armoured tank that he built for whatever reason. I don't know why he built it. I ain't got a clue, because he can control his special abilities. He can control metal because he has like a current of electricity running through him. But he can't control this. He made a tank that he can't control and he can't dismantle and destroy. That doesn't make any sense. And as Ethan, you basically jump onto this tank. It's like a mini little Metal Gear type thing, tank thing. You jump onto it. It's got a chainsaw sticking out of it. It looks ridiculous. And then it's got like a machine gun, minigun, whatever, with infinite ammo. They don't even care at this point. And rockets. And you go out into this battle arena, literally a battle arena. And you face off against Heisenberg, and I kid you not, he's riding around on these little wheels because he just grabbed scrap and parts and stuff and built himself into this Transformers, like Michael Bay, just Transformer boss. I'm not even joking. I'll show you right now what he looks like. That's exactly what he looks like. So, yeah, his enemy design, toss. So, plus points, the Lycans. The Lycans are the only enemy design that I genuinely like in this game. Everything else, underwhelming. Oh, and I guess the mini tyrant things are cool, but we've seen them before. We've seen tyrants and stuff like that, and stuff that looks like that. So, yeah, it's just the Lycans that really impressed me. Everything else is underwhelming and just lazy. It's lazy enemy design, in my personal opinion. I mean, they wanted to go this fantasy setting route. Why not make things were more impressive? They didn't do that. They didn't do that. So, yeah, but if we're talking about cool enemy designs, the Lycans were cool. Finally, I want to move on to audio. There are some issues with audio that we'll get onto a little bit later, because I'm just going to cover all the negatives, because the negatives in this outweigh the positives. Unlike the Resident Evil 2 remake, where I found the positives outweighed the negatives, same with RE7. This is a Resident Evil 3 remake sort of deal, type of deal. So, first off, we'll talk about the positives. The sound design, when it's good, is good. Yeah, it's very atmospheric. And all the kind of grunts and rustles and things are very well done. Like I said, there's some parts in the game where sound is used perfectly, like in that cave section I was talking about. You can hear something just moving and expanding, and it's creepy, definitely. So sound is used well, but it doesn't have a memorable soundtrack. Since Resident Evil 2 Remake onwards, they've slowly sort of decreased the amount of memorable theme tunes that play during a location, or when you stumble across a new location, like the train yard in Resident Evil 2 the original, or Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, where it's the Nemesis theme. They have decreased that. They have scaled back on that. It's literally more about atmosphere and and the wind sort of rustling and something growling in the background than it is now memorable soundtracks and memorable themes for enemies and locations and bosses and things like that. So it's sparse. Let's just say the sound design is sparse, and there's nothing memorable. Nothing memorable in it, other than, I'd say, the only save room theme that you get in Castle Dimitrescu. When you bump into the merchant, there's a save room theme in that part, and that's the only part that has a save room theme. Yes, we don't even get save room themes in this, just that one part. So, and you can hear that over and over again if you play Mercenaries, which is cool, because you always go back there. That's like the hub world of Mercenaries in this game. Talking about Mercenaries, moving on from sound, because the rest of it is bad points to do with sound. Even though this is what I'm saying, I can't talk about the good points and then talk about the negatives without talking about the negatives. So sound design, when it is good, but there are some issues there. So talking about Mercenaries, so you unlock Mercenaries. There's loads of unlockables, which I think is cool. That deserves a replay of the game. You can unlock newer weapons, which I did. Unlock figures, which has become a staple now in Resident Evil. So you can unlock figurines and things. There's loads of that to unlock. Concept art, and I guess, well, not costumes, because you don't get to see your character, but yeah, you get all that extra stuff, and you can buy Mercenaries. It's very cheap. You'll have enough points to buy it at the end of the game, and it's a lot of fun. After I've done with this review and uploaded it, I'm going to go back and jump on Mercenaries and play that. At the end of the day, it does things better than the main game, just because it just pumps enemies at you and you take them out. So it reminds me of Resident Evil 4 more so than the main game does, because there's just like an unending wave of enemies. So yeah, Mercenaries is a lot of fun. I'm going to jump into it when I finish this review, and I highly recommend it. It's great. I think it's great. It's a lot of fun, and just like Resident Evil 4 Mercenaries and Mercenaries in Nemesis and things like that. So Mercenaries is cool. Are there any other good points? Without spoiling anything, the ending is actually quite good. I thought it was quite an emotional ending. And it had a little bit of weight to it, but unfortunately the rest of the story and the way the game plays out and how uneven it is from segment to segment, and then the story and stuff is just as uneven. It didn't earn the ending that it had at the end, I will say that, but the ending is good. I think it was handled very well. Yeah. So from my tone, if you go back and you watch my coverage of Resident Evil Director's Cut, my review of that game, you go back and you watch the review of Resident Evil 7 or Resident Evil 2 Remake, you'll see or listen to my podcast about the Resident Evil series, or just go back and watch any of my other Resident Evil content. You'll see how much love I have for the series, and why I like those specific games on their own merits, and why they impressed me so much and were so unique. And I'm gonna do loads of reviews for the older games and the series in general, and just go through it all, because I do think this is where I part ways with the series, and this game unfortunately has been the catalyst to that. Resident Evil 6 was the first catalyst, and when 7 came out, I was like, okay, let's see what they do, and I was pleasantly surprised. But this, unfortunately, it's not as bad as Resident Evil 6. It's more enjoyable. It's definitely a slicker produced game than Resident Evil 6. But you can tell during that positives review, that part of it, I just wasn't fired up. I was just going through it, almost like this game does. I'm going through the motions of the good points and what I liked. And even then, I couldn't talk about the good points without sharing my opinions on the bad points. Now, while I agree Resident Evil hasn't been Resident Evil for a very long time, has it? The era when Resident Evil was fresh and new was my favourite era. From the original trilogy on the PlayStation to Code Veronica expanding things, to the remake and Zero, expanding it further and sort of fine-tuning and tightening up those experiences and moving them onto next gen at the time. And then Resident Evil 4 just coming along and giving old school fans pretty much a slap across the face and going, this is something new, this is something different, and you either liked it or you didn't. And for the longest time, once I'd finished Resident Evil 4, I'm not ashamed to admit this, I sold that game. I took that game back to the shop and I traded it in for something else. That's when I had it on the GameCube, because I did not like that game to start with. But after getting it for the PS2 and then eventually playing it over and over again over the years, I slowly started to like it and see that it was an enjoyable game in its own right. And even people that don't like that game and they say that's where the series went downhill, even they respect that game for what it did and what it was, and the fact it was fun. That's one of the biggest things about RE4, is it was a lot of fun to play, and it did have these bombastic, stupid moments at times. I'm not forgetting when the giant Salazar statue chased you and you had to get involved in his QTE. The over-the-top knife fight with Krauser, which was epic and really cool. The laser room scene where Leon was backflipping and somersaulting over lasers. The underground lava pit in the castle, all this stuff was so over the top. But you know what? It was so silly and over the top that you kind of found it endearing. I was kind of like, this is so stupid that I like it. Resident Evil 8 is stupid in a different way. At times it goes so over the top without ever really impressing me, like without making me go the other way, like with Resident Evil 4, where I go, oh, this is so silly, it's actually fun. It doesn't have any of that charm of the fourth one. And it sure as hell doesn't get let off for some of the things it includes in the game, and some of the decisions it makes, and the way it fucks with the story's canon and lore. And some of the lazy enemy designs, and just some of the lazy gameplay moments. It doesn't get away with it. Resident Evil 4 was fun from start to finish. This doesn't get away with that. Although Shinji Mikami is the one that created Resident Evil 4 and directed it, that doesn't mean that he couldn't have brought this series back to what it used to be. He could have easily. He created a game in a series that was getting stale, not my words, other people's words. It was losing interest. He created a game that piqued interest again and brought new people on board, who then went and played the older games and became fans of the older games as well as the newer ones. When talking about the Resident Evil 2 remake, it's not perfect by a long shot, but it's the best Resident Evil game to come out of the newer Resident Evil titles. If you like Dead Space, then what is the big issue with Resident Evil 2 Remake? And yes, a lot of people can say, well, the fixed camera angles, the tank controls, the slower pace, the old school vibes of the originals, and that's great. But for something that had to move with the times and incorporate, new gameplay elements and be next gen, Resident Evil 2 Remake did not offend me. It didn't offend me. I've got to be honest with you. I quite enjoyed it. Having said that, after that, it's all gone to shit once again. And this game, it winds me up with how it treats the canon and lore. It's lazily produced. It's uneven. Let's get into it. We're going to talk about some of the things that I disliked. So during the section where you kill Moreau, or it's Buenavito, you go in. I think it's Buenavito. You explore a little bit. You go into this little shack, and you find a new pump-action shotgun. And so you want this new weapon. This is old school Resident Evil stuff. When you find a new weapon, you want it. I wants it, yeah? I wants the precious. You know what I mean? So you pick it up, and then suddenly this little box pops up. That's one thing I didn't talk about, actually. The old school Tetris style inventory, like Resident Evil 4. That makes a return in this one. You get this little box that you can basically waste stuff in, yeah? If you don't have enough room. So you pick up the shotgun, but each weapon takes up different amounts of blocks and space. So this one was taking up quite a bit. So I was fully stocked. And so I went to get rid of my old shotgun, even though it's upgraded, or I started upgrading it, to get this new one, because I was like, sod it, I'll just upgrade this new one. And it said you couldn't get rid of it. So I was like, okay, most of the weapons take up the most space. So I'm thinking, I don't want to get rid of all my health and all my ammo and all this and all that just to get this new gun. So after a little bit of rejigging, putting bits and pieces, fitting them, squashing them together, like whatever, I'm putting bits and pieces everywhere, I was able to grab the gun. But then it dawned on me, up until this point, the fact that this game doesn't resemble a Resident Evil game in the slightest, I hadn't realised there was no item boxes in the game. And this is a huge flaw. Now, a lot of people might say, well, there's been games that haven't had item boxes previously. Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 6, 0, where you could just drop things on the ground. That being the main thing, you could just drop stuff on the ground. So, in a way, Zero was perfectly fine, you know, because you could just drop stuff and pick it up whenever. But yes, 5, 6 didn't have item boxes. Then 7 brought the item boxes back. Now, during this particular segment in the game where you basically go into this cave where Chris and his teammates I talked about earlier have set up camp, you see a green item box sitting right there. It's a reused asset from Resident Evil 7. And you're thinking in your head, are they just winding me up? Are they doing this to take the piss? There's a green item box there, but there's no item box in the game. You can't use this item box. And so going back to this moment where I'm trying to pick up this new shotgun, I basically had to just move stuff and, like I said, squash it together to get the shotgun in my inventory. But I had to get rid of some things as well, like a mine, you know, pipe bomb, etc, etc. Which, by the way, I will say the explosives in the game, they do work really well. You know, they are cool. Like, I put some mines down, killed some enemies. You know, it stopped the sub-bosses a little bit. Threw some, you know, some pipe bombs at them and stuff, and it took out a whole group of them. So the explosives in this game are actually pretty cool. But anyway, so I got rid of some of that stuff, and I was able to take the shotgun. But it led to me thinking, wow, like, you can't get rid of this weapon. You can get rid of some of the smaller items. But you can't get... Actually, I can't even remember if... Maybe I didn't get rid of pipe bombs or mines, because maybe you can't even get rid of those. But there's certain items you can, like health aid and things like that. But yeah, it led to me thinking, wow, this is a major flaw. Because literally in any other Resident Evil game, I would have run back to an item box, you know, deposited the shotgun, the older shotgun, and took the new one. Then I'd have my upgraded shotgun as well as the newer one, which I tried to upgrade, you know, on top of the old one. And if I didn't get... like up to the point of upgrading it as much as the old one, I could use the old shotgun. So yeah, what the hell, Capcom? Where's the item boxes? That would have actually extended the game time if we had to backtrack and go to item boxes to put stuff away. Instead, all you can do is sell your upgraded weapon to the merchant, which, one thing I will say that I do like is it still stays upgraded. So if you go to buy it back, you'll have the same upgrades that you had, you know, previously. But the fact that you have to sell it in order to free up space in your inventory just to take this new gun that isn't upgraded, that sucks. So that is a glaring flaw. That's a glaring flaw in the game, and something I did not like. Up until that point, the thing that made me laugh is up until that point, I hadn't even realised there was no item boxes in the game, because it was literally like a first-person shooter, like a Wolfenstein or Doom game. It wasn't like a Resident Evil game. It didn't resemble a Resident Evil game. And this led me to not conserving ammo or treating it like a Resident Evil game where I thought, oh, there'll be an item box I can deposit this stuff into. You see? So this is how much and how far removed it is from Resident Evil and how much it doesn't feel like a Resident Evil title. Right, one thing that did annoy me is you get locked out of Castle Dimitrescu after you find the poison knife that Ethan used to stab Dimitrescu in the side with. And it's stupid because you actually have a puzzle in there, a labyrinth puzzle, that you could easily have come back to, because all the other ones are, you know, accessible throughout the runtime of the game up until I think you get into the tank to fight Heisenberg. You can go back and you can finish the labyrinth puzzles. You can solve them. With the one in Dimitrescu Castle, you can't, because you get locked out of there for the majority of the game, for the whole of the game. The only time you can actually solve that puzzle is to go in there the first time, and before you kill her, before you take her on her boss form, then you can solve the puzzle. So that leads to me missing basically some gems and a crystal skull, yeah, which is all they produce, to be honest, and that's just used as currency at the merchant's store. What I want to know is, what was the decision to lock players out of the castle? I would have loved to go back there and just explore some more. As it is, I found the puzzle. I just missed the stone ball because I didn't know you needed stone balls to put into them. Because I was playing the game without a guide up to a certain point, but it got to the point where I kind of had to get through it so I could make the review. So yeah, that was a problem. And like I said, there's some uneven decisions and game design in this game. Moving on, I've already talked about the audio issues. There is a few audio issues in this game. When Heisenberg was talking, it sounded like he was... I don't know, he was pitched down an octave, his voice sounded robotic, it was very strange. So yeah, there was that audio issue. Whenever I left Ethan idle, you know, to eat something or just take a break or whatever, or look up something on my social media, just quickly, you know, just having a break essentially, the audio would cut out and pop and stuff like that. Very weird. So that needs patching, that needs sorting out. And then a particular character says something at the end of the game. She goes through a monologue. It's a female character, and because I'm not going to spoilers just yet, but basically it sounded like she was talking through a toilet roll, like literally the middle of a toilet roll sounded like she was talking through that. So I don't know what the hell was going on with the audio in this game, but it wasn't great. Like I said, some of the atmospheric sound effects and things like that, fine. The handgun sounds like crap. There's no weight to the actual sound of the shot going off. The other guns, a lot better, fared a lot better, but yeah, overall audio, not the greatest. No memorable soundtrack, and a lot of audio issues that need patching, definitely. Second thing, the maps are fine, they're cool, but they don't show block paths, leading to you getting confused about which route to take. So when you're first exploring village, the actual village hub world, this is the main part where it gets annoying. The only real part where it gets annoying, it becomes an annoyance, is you'll have like a lot of, like I said earlier, you could jack up this tractor and there's a shortcut. It creates a shortcut. But there's other routes that are blocked off by broken tractors or, just debris, things like that. And it doesn't really tell you on the map, you can't go here. Yeah? It will mark each lord that you've killed with an X, and certain things like rooms and stuff that are blue, turn from red to blue if you find everything. And it will mark like a red door and things like that, but it won't X out the places that you can't go down. Even in the original Silent Hill, when you use the map, and you're going down some of the streets, and if you hit an area where it's blocked off, there's no route available, it will put an X on that route. So even old games have done this. This leads to a lot of frustration because you go down a path that shows that you can go to this house from there and realise, oh, there's a fucking tractor blocking it. So that is an issue as well. Uninspired enemy designs, I've already said about this just now, but yes, the majority of the enemy designs, not counting the Lycans and the Lycan enemies, and just because they're like werewolves, and they're the first time we've seen werewolves in this game. Other than them, all the enemy designs are uninspired. The bosses were okay, they're just okay, but they're still fairly uninspired compared to any bosses from previous Resident Evil games, and even the redesigned versions of Birkin and the G mutants and things like that from Resident Evil 2 Remake. Even Nemesis's redesign was way better. So yeah, uninspired enemy designs. Story goes off the deep end. We'll get into that in spoilers, but it really does, and it changes the canon and lore in a bad way, in my opinion. Again, like I said, I've got bad audio mixing and design here that goes with the audio issues. So yeah, like I previously stated, the audio mixing and the actual design of it and stuff is quite bad. Chris is literally playable for 20 minutes of the game. Maybe 30, I've put here. That's true. Look at how Capcom marketed the game with Chris Redfield on the front, sporting his old look. It's the same Chris from 7, apparently, but he doesn't look the same. Why not just stick to your guns and not listen to what fans were saying, or people who didn't like his design, the game's too scary, I don't like Chris's redesign. Just continue with your original vision, please. I'd respect you more if you did that, but instead, because fans weren't happy, it was too scary, and Chris doesn't look like Chris. Well, let's make this game less scary, we'll nerf the horror, and Chris looks like he did from 5 and 6. Capcom's a company that tries to please everybody, like they did with Resident Evil 6, and when they try to do that, they end up flopping hard. Okay, you don't play as Chris for that long, and literally it resembles a Call of Duty game. I kid you not. We've reached the pinnacle of the series, people, where now it really does mirror and resemble a Call of Duty game. All the jokes aside, Resident Evil 6, it was like a Michael Bay, action shooter, but it's still third person and still resembled like an Uncharted game more than a Call of Duty game, okay? Uncharted's a great series, but I didn't want my Resident Evil to be like Uncharted, okay? This resembles Call of Duty, the latest one actually. There's parts in the game where Chris will don his night vision goggles, and he goes into like a house, one of the houses in the village, and some werewolves run in, and you basically take them out like it's a section out of the latest Call of Duty game, where they hunt the terrorists and stuff in that building in London. So we've reached that point in the series where they actually have essentially created a Call of Duty style first person shooter. That's where we're at with the series. And at the end, the end resembles a Call of Duty game more than any other game in the series. Is the section fun?
yeah, I get to shoot stuff with a gun, first-person shooter type of way. Could I play something like Wolfenstein or Doom instead? Yeah, I could, and it controls better, and you can jump in those games. There you go. And one of the biggest crimes this game commits is there's no save room music, like I said previously, and that is a huge crime, because every other game had save room music, and it was good. I've always loved the save room music, even if the game's been a pile of crap. The save room music's always put a smile on my face, no matter how bad the experience has been. And you only get that in one little area in the castle with the merchant. The merchant's room, and that's it. That's all you get. And then in Mercenaries. So yeah, biggest crime to commit is not even have save room music in this game, but it doesn't, because it's going for the more atmospheric route and all that other crap. So. Oh, yeah. So there are some of the bad points, definitely. Now, rather than carry on, with the bad points and, have you lot just, I don't know, hate me more, hate me even more than you probably hate me already, because you probably, like this game and you fell in love with it, some of you, not all of you. I'm going to continue on to the story spoilers and the plot spoilers, so get ready. But there are a load more issues and problems with this game. Things like Heisenberg's factory goes on too long, even though I did like it as a location. There's not enough for Castle Dimitrescu. The Moreau and Donna Benevito sections of the game are very short, don't really flesh the characters out like that much. They're underwhelming. There's a great bit of horror during Bonavito's section, but it's like something out of Silent Hill. This game borrows stuff from Akira, definitely to do with, we'll get into it in plot spoilers. And the end boss battle is extremely underwhelming and very, very silly. There's loads of issues with this game, and just know that there is a reason why I'm giving it the score I give it at the end of this. We are going to score this now, though, and I've got to be honest, like I said, and I've gone over, all the negatives outweigh the positives when it comes to this game. Unfortunately, I can't give it more than a 7, personally, and it almost leaned on a 6. My previous review that I did do for this, I went with a 6. The only reason it gets a 7 is because there are moments, and it does do some things more unique than, say, the Resident Evil 3 remake. I'd rather play this than the Resident Evil 3 remake, definitely, but that also comes down to the fact that the Resident Evil 3 remake is just a shitty remake of a classic game, and this is just something new that I don't have to look at it and go, well, something already exists of this, although it does, Resident Evil 4, and that does it better. But having said that, I guess any other first-person shooter that's worth its weight. But having said that, like people have said, one half of it's good or the other half's kind of crap. It's kind of disjointed. It's more like there's good moments and crap moments just in the game, just as you progress in the game. There's not really a half that's good and a half that's rubbish. There's just a lot of rubbish moments and a lot of good moments just sprinkled in the game as you progress through the game. So it's a 7 out of 10. This game's a 7 out of 10. It's nowhere near as good as Resident Evil 7. I wish they continued with what 7 had done and progressed that way. They didn't. They decided to do something that was a first-person shooter, Resident Evil 4 clone, almost clone, mixed with Doom Eternal, Wolfenstein, any other first-person shooter, and then by the end of it, you're playing Call of Duty. Literally, you're playing Call of Duty. And so I can't give it more than that. I have to say it's a 7 out of 10. It's a competent first-person shooter Resident Evil hybrid thing. I can't even, because it's not even a Resident Evil game. When I was playing it, I wasn't like, oh yeah, this is Resident Evil. When I played 7, I was like, oh, this reminds me of the original, where it's holding itself back and it's got these little moments just like the original. And you're in this mansion and you're trying to navigate the mansion and you go all through the walls and the secret compartments and try and work out the puzzles. No, this isn't that. This is Resident Evil 4 first-person shooter, but Resident Evil 4 light, definitely. And as for people saying, oh, it's action-packed, it's not. There's moments of genuine boredom. It slows down to a snail's pace to a crawl, and then there's moments where it ramps the action up, but it only lasts for about 20 to 30 seconds. Literally, you just, like I said, shoot a red barrel, take out 6 of them. So maybe on hardcore difficulty, it's a lot more enjoyable. I'm going to try that next, but for now, it's a 7 out of 10. It's a 7 out of 10 Resident Evil game. It's a 7 out of 10 first-person shooter game. It's a straight up 7 out of 10. This is a non-Shill review. I don't care what anyone wants to say. If you think this is the best Resident Evil game to date, and I don't mind people having differences of opinion, because if you think this is a better game than 4, or a better game than the older games, the remake of the first one, you know, all the originals, Code Veronica even, like, if you think this is a better game than those, you're wrong. I got to disagree with you, sir, on that one. Definitely. It's a 7 out of 10 game. If you want to hold it in its own regard, on its own merits, in its own right, as its own thing, it's a 7 out of 10 game. So it's up there with the Resident Evil 3 remake in terms of scores. It's better than Resident Evil 3 remake by a long shot, by a long mile. It's better than Resident Evil 6. But there's even bits in 6 where I felt like, you know, the enemy encounters and stuff were, I don't know, just a bit more exciting than maybe this game. Or, you know, but I've only played this once, so when I play through it again and again, you know, I'll probably think differently and feel differently. It's a better game than 6, definitely. And it's a better game than the remake of 3, but it's still in that category. Definitely. You know, I don't even think I like it as much as 5, because 5, while it was an action game, it was fun in co-op. I will say that, and I didn't mind the story in 5. It has that going for it, but it's still, this game is still in that category with those titles, definitely. It's just a very subpar, not very unique or impressive Resident Evil spin-off. It is a spin-off. They wanted people to call it Village. Well, you know what? Maybe you should, because this is more like a spin-off game that doesn't have anything to do with Resident Evil. Except it's not in its canon, and we're going to get into that in a bit. So, unfortunately, canonically, yeah, it is it's canon, isn't it? It's going to be classed as canon and taken as canon. Story-wise, plot-wise, and some of the things it does as well do remind me of like Revelations 2, so I do think this was originally supposed to be Revelations 3, and you'll see why when we talk about spoilers. So anyway, we're going to move into spoilers, and yeah, I'm going to ruin some things, so there is a warning. So if you don't want to be spoiled, don't watch past this point.